In the echoes of history, the lives of ordinary people often brushed against the extraordinary. While some characters in this story are born from imagination, others, like Emperor Claudius and Constantine, are drawn directly from the pages of the past. Together, they create a narrative that blends the real with the fictional, offering a glimpse into what could have happened. Chapter 1: A Walk Through Rome. The early morning light stretched gently across Rome, casting a soft glow over the intricate marble columns and towering statues that populated the city's bustling forum. Here, in the heart of the empire, life stirred early. Vendors arranged their wares along cobbled streets, craftsmen hammered at iron and bronze, and the murmur of voices filled the air, growing steadily into a hum of anticipation. The smell of fresh bread mingled with incense drifting from nearby temples, and the thick scent of newly opened amphorae of wine reached the nose of Marcus Varius, a young Roman engineer, as he walked slowly along the edge of the plaza. Marcus was not one to hurry. He preferred to let his mind wander, much like a drop of water tracing its path along the stone conduits he had spent his early career studying. Today, his destination was no less than a meeting with the Aqueducts team, the engineers behind Rome's famed aqueducts, an assignment he had been entrusted with by the imperial office. He was an observant man, slender yet strong, with dark hair and a contemplative gaze, his thoughts always half-occupied by his work. Today, though, his walk took him past sights that were anything but mundane. As he wandered, his eyes lingered on the details of the forum's splendor, the perfectly aligned columns, the rhythmic proportions of the temples and the statues, each figure immortalized in solid marble, standing as silent witnesses to Rome's ambitions and power. The city's pulse seemed to beat in harmony with the flow of water that fed it. Behind Rome's glistening facades lay an unseen network of aqueducts, tirelessly carrying water from distant sources to this very hub of civilization. Marcus had heard stories of Rome's earlier days, of riverside huts and men drawing water by hand. Now, looking around at the grandeur before him, he could scarcely imagine those simpler times. To him, the aqueducts were not just infrastructure. They were lifelines for a city that had become the heart of the world. These aqueducts were Rome's pride and promise, tangible evidence of the ingenuity that allowed it to outlast enemies and expand its borders. Lost in thought, Marcus was nearly startled to see a gathering ahead, a mix of dignitaries, advisors, and guards in imperial dress surrounding none other than the emperor himself. Claudius, austere yet intent, observed the nearby construction with a shrewd eye. While not as imposing as some of his predecessors, Claudius commanded an air of quiet authority, his stooped figure perched near a group of workers busy measuring lengths of stone. The emperor was deep in conversation, his voice occasionally drifting to those nearby. He gestured to the workers as he spoke, a sign of his personal investment in the project at hand. His robe was modest for an emperor, its hem slightly stained from dust and splashes of mud, as though he had been closely inspecting the work himself. Drawing closer, Marcus caught bits of Claudius's words, spoken in his characteristically clear yet slightly halting voice. The water, yes, it must reach farther now. More neighborhoods, more families. Rome has outgrown its channels. If we do not expand, the city will suffer. He paused, raising a finger thoughtfully. Water brings life, sustains growth, and guards against sickness. Marcus nodded to himself, though he was careful not to interrupt. Rome's growing population had strained the existing aqueduct system, and Claudius understood this better than most. The emperor had taken on the ambitious task of expanding the aqueduct network, pushing for new channels and reservoirs that would serve neighborhoods farther from the forum. This meant countless hours of labor, meticulous planning, and keen engineering, a daunting yet exhilarating prospect for a young engineer like Marcus. He wondered how long it would take for his own work to leave a mark on the city as visible as these ancient arches and stone conduits that snaked their way into Rome. Marcus continued his stroll, feeling the weight of his new role settle upon him, a burden as real as the dense limestone slabs cut for the aqueducts themselves. With each step, he imagined the water coursing through the conduits, carrying life to the bustling metropolis. His hand brushed the rough stone of a nearby column, and he felt a surge of respect for the craftsmen who had carved, placed, and secured each piece. He thought of the precise angles, the painstaking adjustments required to maintain the aqueduct's gentle slope, ensuring water moved smoothly, harnessed but never forced. The engineering was complex and layered, a quiet tribute to Rome's advanced understanding of mechanics, of gravity, of stone. Claudius's voice broke Marcus's reverie. "The aqueducts," the emperor declared, "will keep Rome thriving. Without water, no city can survive. But Rome must do more than survive. It must flourish." The emperor's words echoed, resonant with conviction. As Claudius gestured to his architects and engineers, Marcus felt a spark of inspiration, a sense of purpose that urged him forward. He would join the Aqueductus team not only as an engineer, but as a steward of Rome's future. As he finally reached the appointed gathering spot to join his new colleagues, Marcus cast one last glance at the Forum and the towering temples. Beneath the surface, far beneath the lively streets and crowded squares, the water channels awaited him. Dark, narrow corridors of stone, where engineers toiled out of sight, yet whose work touched every life in Rome. With his task ahead, Marcus took a steady breath and embraced the gravity of his mission, knowing he would be part of something that would endure long after the Forum's echoes faded. Chapter 2: The Blueprint of a Dream. The low hum of conversation and the metallic clink of tools greeted Marcus as he stepped into the engineering workshop near the Aqua Appia. Inside, sunlight poured through the wide entryway, casting a warm glow over the organized chaos within. Sturdy wooden tables bore the weight of tools, maps, and large, meticulously drawn diagrams of aqueduct plans, while shelves held an array of Roman surveying instruments, each tool gleaming with the promise of precision. Workers bustled around, some discussing measurements in earnest tones, others carefully examining materials to be used in the construction. Marcus immediately felt the buzz of a shared purpose in the air. Around him was a team of craftsmen, surveyors, and architects, each of them an expert in their own right, yet each working towards a single goal: to carve out a pathway for life-giving water to reach Rome's growing population. Marcus recognized a few familiar faces from previous projects, but also noted a wide range of ages and backgrounds, from seasoned veterans of Rome's ambitious building programs to younger apprentices eager to prove their worth. One of the men approached him, a wiry figure with sharp, intelligent eyes and a relaxed smile. "You must be Marcus Varius, the new recruit," he said, extending a calloused hand. "I'm Lucius Domitian, the project's lead surveyor. Welcome to the Aqueductus team." Marcus took his hand, feeling the strength of years of work in Lucius's grip. "An honor to join you all," he replied, glancing around. "I've heard tales of this team's skill, but seeing it firsthand, it's remarkable." Lucius chuckled. "Skill is one thing, but this project is a beast of its own. We're pulling water from nearly 30 miles away for this section, and the route we've mapped is hardly forgiving." He gestured towards a large map spread across a table nearby. Intricate lines crisscrossed the parchment, indicating changes in elevation, potential obstacles, and calculated paths that would bring the aqueduct's water to Rome as efficiently as possible. Gathered around the map was a small group of engineers and laborers deep in discussion. At the center, a gray-haired architect, his toga modestly draped, pointed with a stylus to an area marked by steep slopes and uneven terrain. Marcus could see him tracing the line that would eventually carry water down gentle inclines, through valleys, and over hills toward the heart of the city. The team leaned in, each man weighing the complexities and practicalities of the route. "This is where the chorobates comes in handy," the architect was saying, holding up a long wooden instrument that Marcus recognized from his studies. The chorobates, a leveling device that used plumb lines to ensure precise gradients, was invaluable for aqueduct construction. Only with exact measurements could they maintain the gentle slope needed to keep water moving smoothly without stagnation or damaging force. The architect handed Marcus the instrument, allowing him to feel its weight. "With this," he explained, "we can measure elevation to within a hair's breadth, even a fraction off, and we risk everything: the flow, the purity of the water, the structural integrity. A single mistake could mean rebuilding miles of conduit." Marcus nodded, examining the instrument with a mix of awe and respect. "I see now why our measurements must be flawless," he murmured, tracing the polished wood and taut lines of the chorobates. Next to it lay another tool he recognized from training: the groma, an essential Roman instrument for laying out straight lines and right angles. Its wooden frame held a cross-like shape, with plumb lines hanging from each end to establish alignments with impeccable precision. Lucius pointed to the groma, smiling as he saw Marcus's interest. "And that's our trusted groma," he said. "For every bend, every straight line, we rely on it. It's as much a part of this project as the stone itself." As Lucius explained further, Marcus's mind began to fill with the scope of the undertaking. Rome's reliance on fresh water was paramount, yet the aqueduct was more than a mere channel. It was a feat of ingenuity, mathematics, and collaboration. They would need to work around natural obstacles, navigate valleys with arches, and carve tunnels through hillsides, all while maintaining a gradient so precise that a difference of just 1 foot in height over several hundred feet could cause the entire flow to stagnate. It was mathematics brought to life. The discussion around the table shifted to materials, with architects debating the merits of various stones. Rome's aqueducts had to withstand both the weight of water and the elements, and it was common knowledge that selecting the right stone was vital to the longevity of any conduit. Tufa, a porous local stone, was often favored for its lightweight structure and arches, while more durable limestone slabs were essential for sections exposed to high pressure or structural strain. One of the laborers, a burly man with a broad grin named Faustus, chimed in with a hearty voice. "I say we bring in the heavier limestone for the arches over the valleys. We'll need it if we want those structures to stand the test of time. No need to worry about weight when you have a good foundation." Lucius raised a brow, nodding thoughtfully. "True enough, the arches will carry the weight well. And speaking of arches, Marcus," he added, turning back to him, "they'll be central to our work. In many places, they're the only way to maintain the aqueduct's gradient over the dips and swells of the land." Marcus recalled his studies on Rome's mastery of the arch. Using arches, the Romans could create stable structures that spanned wide gaps and distributed weight evenly, minimizing the amount of material needed without sacrificing strength. These stone arches would be placed meticulously along valleys, each keystone perfectly fitted to bear the structure's weight and the water's passage for generations. As the day wore on, the team's collaboration deepened. Engineers sketched routes, calculating the aqueduct's gentle slope, while Lucius and the surveyors paced out sections, marking each line with rods and examining each elevation closely with their groma. Marcus found himself pulled into the work, his hands tracing the map, his mind racing through measurements. He envisioned the flowing water as though it already ran through their conduits, a constant, life-giving pulse fed by the land and guided by Rome's ingenuity. And there, amidst the voices of laborers and engineers and the precise clatter of tools, Marcus felt the magnitude of the task settle around him, a blueprint not merely for water, but for life itself. The aqueduct would wind through the hills and valleys, its route born from calculations and dedication, each stone and line laid with a vision of the future. Chapter 3: Mastering the Waters, the Aqua Claudia. The air was thick with dust as Marcus stepped onto the construction site of Aqua Claudia, a project renowned across Rome not only for its scale, but for its complexity. The site stretched as far as the eye could see, where masses of workers moved in near-perfect unison, like parts of a well-oiled machine. Here, the faint roar of pickaxes striking stone, the grinding of pulleys lifting heavy loads, and the shouts of overseers filled the air with a relentless rhythm. The Aqua Claudia was no ordinary aqueduct. It was a marvel of ambition and engineering, one of the largest undertakings the empire had ever attempted. Running nearly 50 miles from the Anio Valley to the heart of Rome, it was designed to bring an unprecedented volume of fresh water into the city. Yet, the terrain along its route was unforgiving, filled with jagged hills, deep valleys, and stretches of unstable soil. Just a few years ago, an attempt to construct an aqueduct along this route had failed, a disaster that left sections of the structure collapsing under their own weight. As he surveyed the landscape, Marcus felt the weight of past lessons pressing upon him, reminders of the importance of stability and precision. "Mind the slope and mind it well," came the voice of Gaius Sevius, a senior engineer overseeing the Aqua Claudia project. Gaius, an older man with a stern, weathered face, had been working on Rome's aqueducts for over 3 decades. His hair was gray, and his skin bore the marks of long hours in the sun, yet his mind was sharp, his knowledge vast. He motioned Marcus over to a large stone basin filled with water, where he demonstrated the gentle slope that was essential to the aqueduct's design. Too steep, and the water flows too fast, eroding the channel. Too shallow, and it stagnates. Every inch of elevation matters. Gaius placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, leading him toward a segment of the aqueduct in progress. Here, thick columns of stone rose from the ground, forming arches that would carry the channel over a valley. Crews worked carefully to position each stone, their movements deliberate and coordinated. The workers lifted blocks with the aid of pulleys, each block hoisted into place with painstaking care to ensure the structure's stability. Gaius gestured toward the base of the arches. "These foundations go deep, reinforced to withstand shifts in the soil. We don't want a repeat of the last attempt." He paused, his gaze heavy with memory. "A few years ago, we didn't account for the soil's movements. Sections cracked and water seeped through. Hundreds of workers had to repair the damage, and the water loss, well, it was nearly catastrophic. To prevent a repeat of such a failure, the engineers relied on a specialized Roman innovation, opus signinum. This waterproof cement, a reddish mixture made from crushed terracotta and lime, was spread thickly along the aqueduct's interior walls, sealing the stone against leaks. Marcus marveled as he watched the workers apply the opus signum, their hands carefully smoothing it along the channel's surface. Once dried, the cement would be as solid as stone, but with the added benefit of impermeability, ensuring that every drop of water reaching Rome was safeguarded. "We've learned from our failures," Gaius continued, as they observed a group of men expertly laying the cement. "This opus signinum keeps the channel watertight, even if the stones shift slightly over time. Without it, our precious water would seep away long before it reached the city." Marcus nodded. His admiration for the engineering skill involved growing with each observation. He could see the intense planning that went into each detail. The Aqua Claudia wasn't merely a structure, it was a network of calculated decisions, adjustments, and materials chosen with care. The engineers had left nothing to chance. He recalled the ancient Greek builders who had also mastered water control. But Rome's innovations, their cement, their mastery of arches, had elevated the craft, ensuring longevity and efficiency on a scale unmatched by any previous civilization. Nearby, he noticed a group of surveyors adjusting their groma, aligning it carefully to measure the gradual slope of the aqueduct. The tool's plumb lines swayed slightly in the breeze, and Marcus could see how much focus it required to ensure the measurements were exact. The surveyors marked points in the soil, verifying that each new section maintained the gentle descent needed to carry the water forward. Their eyes narrowed with concentration, knowing that even a minor deviation could disrupt the flow over the length of miles. As the day wore on, Marcus moved closer to where the stonemasons were setting blocks in place along a steep incline. This area required extra support, and Marcus could see that the workers had reinforced it with additional arches beneath the main channel. "It's the arch," explained one of the masons, seeing Marcus's interest. "With it, we can carry weight over the valleys without bending or breaking. Each keystone holds the others in place, distributing weight down through the columns." Marcus ran his hand over the stones, feeling the precise cuts and careful placement. He was struck by the simplicity yet profound strength of the arch, a testament to Rome's ability to harness natural principles in ways that not only met practical needs, but did so with an elegance that bordered on art. Rome's aqueducts were not only functional, they were symbols of the empire's power, standing as monuments to human ingenuity. By late afternoon, Marcus had seen enough to appreciate the sheer complexity of the Aqua Claudia. The workers, from seasoned engineers like Gaius to the youngest laborers, all shared a sense of purpose that connected them. Each man, no matter his role, played a part in something larger than himself, knowing that their collective effort would provide clean water to countless Roman homes. He found himself absorbed in this unity of purpose, realizing that his own efforts would contribute to a legacy that might stand for centuries. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows over the construction site, Marcus felt a quiet pride settle over him. Aqua Claudia was more than a conduit. It was a testament to Rome's ambition and ability to conquer the natural world. And in those last golden rays of daylight, he caught a glimpse of the future he was helping to build. A Rome that would endure, held together not just by the stone arches and opus signinum, but by the hands, minds, and dreams of its people. Chapter 4. Public Health and Private Wealth. The midday sun hung high over Rome, casting a warm glow on the marble columns and bronze statues that lined the city's winding streets. From his place near the Forum, Marcus could see throngs of Romans clustered around a series of public fountains, their faces and garments dappled by the splashes of cool, flowing water. Here, in these bustling intersections of city life, Rome's aqueduct system became visible in its purest form, its lifeblood channeling water into fountains, baths, and homes with remarkable efficiency. Marcus stood by a large public fountain known as the Lacus Curtius, a grand circular basin adorned with carvings of dolphins and shells. Families gathered around it, filling clay amphorae and woven baskets with water. Children dipped their hands into the pool, laughing as they splashed one another, while elderly citizens sat nearby, their faces creased with relief as they took in the cool mist rising from the fountain's surface. It was a scene of everyday life, yet to Marcus, it represented the unseen workings of Rome's engineering marvels, the precision of slopes, the reinforced stone channels, the arches stretching over valleys, all brought to life in the steady trickle of water here in the city center. Moving along the Via Sacra, Marcus entered the district known for its grand bathhouses. The Baths of Agrippa, one of the oldest and most popular in Rome, loomed before him, its entrance crowded with citizens eager to escape the dust and heat. Inside, he could hear the faint echoes of voices mingling with the sound of running water. The baths were built to be a sanctuary for the people, a place where Romans could refresh themselves and engage in leisurely conversation, all thanks to the aqueducts that tirelessly supplied clean water from miles away. Marcus marveled at the bath's vast interior, a series of interconnected rooms, each bathed in soft light filtering through arched windows. The caldarium, or hot room, was lined with marble slabs that retained heat, while the frigidarium, a large cold pool, offered a shock of relief to those exiting the heated baths. Alongside him, citizens of all classes gathered, enjoying a few hours of respite. Here, slaves, merchants, and soldiers mingled freely, sharing the same waters, bound by a fleeting equality that vanished outside these walls. Yet Marcus knew that this access to water, this simple privilege, was not equally available to all. While the public baths and fountains brought water to the masses, the wealthier citizens enjoyed privileges far beyond these communal luxuries. For the elite, water was a private commodity. Their domus, or private homes, boasted elaborate gardens and indoor pools, all fed by dedicated water pipes that tapped directly into the city's aqueducts. As he walked past the towering mansions lining the Palatine Hill, Marcus could see the evidence of this quiet distinction. Carved stone basins filled with fresh water, small fountains hidden within walled courtyards, and even elaborate indoor mosaics around ornamental pools. Passing one of these homes, Marcus noticed a finely dressed woman watering a courtyard garden from a bronze spout that spilled clear water into her outstretched jug. Her silken stola shimmered in the sunlight, a stark contrast to the simple tunics of the workers he had just left behind. Marcus couldn't help but think of the thousands of others gathering their water from crowded fountains or waiting in line at the baths. To have a private source of water was a luxury few could imagine, and it spoke to the layered complexities of Rome's social fabric, where water, vital, ever-flowing, was another marker of privilege. Though he was fascinated by the achievements of Roman engineering, Marcus found himself troubled by the disparity. Rome's aqueduct system brought clean water to a city of over 1 million people, a feat unmatched in the ancient world, yet access still depended on wealth and social standing. At its heart, Rome was a city of contrasts, and the very aqueducts that elevated its status also underscored its divisions. As he moved back toward the Forum, he passed a smaller fountain at the corner of a narrow street. A group of children splashed in its shallow pool, yet their shrieks of laughter rising above the noise of the city. Near them, a group of laborers sat on the fountain's stone edge, dipping their hands into the cool water to wipe the dust from their faces after a long day's work. It was in these simpler corners of the city that Marcus saw the true spirit of Rome, the joy of ordinary people, uniting around the essential gift of water, despite the divisions that ran deep within the city's walls. Water was both a blessing and a silent testament to Rome's hierarchy. To the wealthy, it was a mark of status, a convenience brought right into the heart of their homes. To the commoners, it was a communal lifeline, a chance to gather, refresh, and share a few moments of respite in an otherwise hard life. This system, complex and layered, reflected Rome's values as much as its engineering prowess. Water had become more than just a necessity. It was woven into the social fabric, a quiet but unyielding force that shaped public life and private comfort alike. As Marcus made his way back to the workshop, he couldn't help but reflect on the layers of society he had glimpsed that day. The aqueducts, Arches and pipes that carried water across valleys, through hillsides, and into the city were more than feats of engineering. They were silent witnesses to the lives of the people who relied on them. From the grandeur of the baths of Agrippa to the small fountains on Rome's quietest streets, the gift of water sustained Rome's vast and varied populace, each drop a reminder of the unseen hands and minds that kept it flowing. Chapter 5. Beyond Aqueducts, Roads and Sewers. Dust and gravel crunched underfoot as Marcus made his way to the construction site of a new road outside Rome's walls. The sun was still low, casting long shadows across the land, and the air held the earthy scent of freshly turned soil. Around him, the laborers were already at work, hauling stones and spreading layers of gravel, each man driven by a steady rhythm that spoke of experience. The road was destined to connect Rome to the southern provinces, a route critical for the flow of goods, soldiers, and information. To Marcus, it was a marvel of Roman ambition, another great artery of empire that would carry lifeblood to the farthest reaches of the known world. As he observed the work, a wiry, middle-aged foreman with a stern gaze approached him, gesturing toward the layers of packed earth, gravel, and paving stones. "Young man, they call this the Via Strata," he began with a trace of pride. "Every road we build has layers, each laid with purpose, for strength and for stability." The foreman pointed to the wide trench where the road would run, explaining the careful process of construction. First, they excavated down to the bedrock, or as deep as the soil would allow. This was followed by a packed layer of large stones, the stadamen, providing a solid foundation. Above that, smaller stones were layered and compacted, forming the rudis, and finally came the nucleus, a mix of sand and gravel, upon which the thick paving stones, the summum dorsum, were carefully set. "We're not just throwing stones down," the foreman continued. "The slope in the center keeps rainwater draining to the sides so it won't weaken the stones. Rain's no friend to these roads, but they'll withstand it. Everything here is built to last." He chuckled, his fingers brushing against the rough, freshly cut stones. Marcus noted how the surface was ever so slightly arched, creating a camber that would direct water off the sides, protecting the road from erosion. The engineers calculated every angle with care, knowing that even the smallest misstep could affect the road's durability. Marcus watched as a group of soldiers tested the new stones by marching over them, their heavy boots ringing in unison. The roads were built for this very purpose, to allow the legions to march swiftly and efficiently across the empire. The speed with which Roman soldiers could be deployed across provinces depended upon these roads, and the empire's stability relied upon the rapid movement of its army. Merchants, too, would soon travel along these very stones, carrying exotic goods from faraway lands, spices, silk, and precious metals, directly into Rome's bustling markets. Every road reinforced the empire's control, connecting the farthest reaches of its territories to the center of power. After studying the construction, Marcus continued his journey, making his way back into the city toward the heart of Rome's underground marvel, the Cloaca Maxima. The Great Sewer, an ancient feat of engineering originally built centuries ago, ran beneath the city like a hidden river, drawing waste away from the streets and into the Tiber River. Although concealed from view, the sewer system was essential to Rome's health and cleanliness, silently bearing the city's refuse away and preventing the foul stench and filth that could otherwise overtake its crowded streets. Stepping into one of the tunnels leading to the Cloaca Maxima, Marcus felt the cool, damp air wrap around him, mixed with the faint odor of the city above. The tunnel was vast, arching overhead in a seamless curve of stone that had weathered the years without losing its strength. The walls were lined with blocks of volcanic tufa, their porous structure ideal for handling the constant flow of water. Built originally as an open canal, the Cloaca Maxima had been covered and extended over generations, evolving from a simple drainage ditch into a sophisticated sewer that kept the city's foundations clean and safe. He moved slowly, observing the flow of water rushing through the tunnel below. It coursed steadily, carrying waste and rainwater out to the Tiber, its movement essential for preventing flooding after heavy rains. During the rainy season, these waters would swell, and thanks to careful engineering, the sewer could handle the increased volume, diverting water efficiently and protecting Rome from dangerous floods. Marcus marveled at the foresight of the engineers who had crafted the system. Long before the aqueducts, the Cloaca Maxima had served the city, keeping the streets passable, the air cleaner, and the population healthier. The importance of this unseen river was difficult to overstate. Without it, the density of Rome's population would have led to unsanitary conditions, spreading sickness and disease among the people. The Cloaca Maxima did not simply prevent filth from piling up. It was a safeguard against outbreaks that could devastate the city. By drawing waste out of public view and public life, the sewer had become a silent guardian of health and order. Standing there in the dim light filtering down from narrow grates above, Marcus understood that the Cloaca Maxima, much like the aqueducts and roads, represented more than just Roman engineering. It was a testament to Rome's commitment to its people, a piece of civic architecture designed not merely to impress, but to serve. From the soldiers who marched upon its roads to the merchants who carried their goods, from the elites with their private water pipes to the common people who relied on the public baths and fountains, each Roman benefited in some way from these massive undertakings. And yet, like the roads and aqueducts, the Cloaca Maxima also reflected Rome's hierarchy. The wealthy enjoyed cleaner and more spacious living quarters, free from the waste that occasionally backed up in the crowded quarters of the poor. Rome's infrastructure, for all its innovations, reinforced social divisions as much as it bridged them. As Marcus emerged from the sewer and returned to the busy streets, he felt a profound respect for the work he had seen. Rome's greatness was not in its wealth alone, but in its vision to provide for its people, to design a city that could endure the pressures of population and time. The roads, aqueducts, and sewers were all part of a vast, interconnected system that allowed Rome to flourish, even in its vast complexity. The city, he realized, was not simply a collection of buildings and monuments. It was a living entity, and each road, pipe, and tunnel was like a vein carrying lifeblood through its massive body. To be part of that system, even in a small way, filled Marcus with a quiet pride. He had stepped into the heart of the empire's infrastructure, witnessing firsthand the ingenuity that sustained it, and he knew now that his work, like that of the roads and sewers, was part of something enduring, a legacy built stone by stone, flowing onward like the Cloaca Maxima's steady currents. Chapter 6: The Heating Marvel, Hypocausts and Roman Baths. Marcus felt a wave of warmth as he stepped into the private villa of Gaius Septimius, a wealthy senator known for his love of luxurious comforts. The villa sprawled elegantly over the hillside, its exterior adorned with columns and frescoes that captured the eye, but it was the interior that held Marcus's attention today. Gaius had invited him to inspect the villa's hypocaust system, a marvel of Roman engineering that kept the villa comfortably warm even in the cool morning air. As Marcus walked through the wide, marble-lined hallways, the faint warmth radiating through the floors was unmistakable, a subtle yet remarkable feat of design. "Ah, Marcus, welcome!" Gaius greeted him, his arms wide in a gesture of welcome. "I see you feel it already. My floors are warmer than even the sunniest morning." He laughed, clearly delighted with the comforts his wealth afforded him. Gaius led Marcus toward a small opening in the floor, where a thin plume of warmth drifted up from beneath the surface. Crouching, Marcus could just make out the intricate network of pillars and empty spaces underneath the floors. These brick columns, he knew, were the heart of the hypocaust system, supporting the floors and creating a cavity through which warm air could flow. "Fascinating," Marcus murmured, running a hand over the smooth marble tiles. The floors retained a gentle warmth, enough to make the air pleasantly cozy without being stifling. This system was the result of meticulous planning and design, an arrangement that allowed for both efficiency and comfort. A furnace located just outside the villa produced the heat, and slaves fed the fire throughout the day, ensuring a steady flow of warm air. This air traveled beneath the raised floors, circulating within the cavity created by the brick pillars before rising up into the villa. "This hypocaust heats not only the floors, but the walls too," Gaius said, gesturing to the smooth plaster walls, which felt noticeably warm to the touch. "I tell you, there is nothing quite like it. In the cold months, when Rome's chill sets in, my family and I can walk barefoot through the villa, even at night." Gaius's eyes sparkled with pride, and Marcus couldn't help but share his admiration. It was no small feat to create such an evenly heated space in a sprawling villa. This was comfort on a scale few Romans could imagine, yet it showed how innovation could transform not only the public baths, but the private lives of Rome's wealthiest citizens. The villa's heating system was nearly silent, the only hint of its workings a faint hum as warm air moved gently through the channels beneath the floors. As they moved into the villa's private bath, Marcus noted the additional vents leading from the hypocaust to keep the caldarium, the hot room, warm and steamy year-round. Unlike the great public baths, which had multiple furnaces for their vast spaces, the villa required only a single furnace, feeding a smaller network of channels but achieving the same effect. As he departed from Gaius's villa, Marcus turned his steps toward the larger public bathhouse, eager to see the hypocaust on a grander scale. The baths of Caracalla stood like a monument to Rome's luxury, a sprawling complex of caldaria, tepidaria, and frigidaria, where citizens of all classes came not only to bathe but to socialize, exercise, and relax. Marcus entered through the wide atrium, breathing in the faint scent of olive oil and warmed stone. Despite the throngs of people, the space felt vast, with towering columns and vaulted ceilings, creating an atmosphere of grandeur and calm. Here, too, the hypocaust system worked tirelessly to keep the baths warm throughout the seasons. Unlike the compact furnace in Gaius's villa, the baths required multiple large furnaces, each tended by slaves who fed them with wood from dawn to dusk. The hot air traveled through a network of channels, first heating the caldarium, then cooling slightly as it flowed into the tepidarium, or warm room. The hypocaust was a silent master of temperature, creating an atmosphere where bathers could move from one room to another, each area kept at the ideal warmth. Inside the caldarium, Marcus marveled at the warmth permeating the air and floors alike. Slaves had poured buckets of water over heated stones, releasing clouds of steam that mingled with the hot air rising from below. Bathers reclined on benches, their skin flushed from the heat, some scraping oil and sweat from their skin with curved metal strigils. In the center of the room was a large steaming pool, its surface reflecting the dim light filtering through small windows high above. As he moved closer, Marcus could feel the heat radiating from the pool itself, warmed both by the hypocaust below and by hot water piped directly into the basin. As Marcus observed, he noted how skillfully the Romans had integrated the hypocaust system into the bath's layout, making use of natural physics to move the air throughout the different rooms. The floor tiles were slightly loose, allowing the hot air to seep up into the rooms without escaping too quickly, while the walls were lined with terracotta tiles, which retained heat and helped keep the warmth even across the space. Every detail had been planned to ensure comfort, creating an atmosphere that felt both luxurious and efficient. It was remarkable to see how a single innovation, the hypocaust, had shaped so much of Roman public and private life. The baths were more than a place to cleanse the body. They were an experience, a space where the social life of the city played out daily. And the hypocausts, tirelessly heating the air and water, made this comfort accessible to all classes. From the wealthiest citizens to the humblest laborers who gathered in the baths to unwind after long days. To Marcus, this system embodied the spirit of Roman ingenuity, an invention designed not only for utility but for quality of life, blending practicality with pleasure. As he left the baths of Caracalla that afternoon, Marcus reflected on the broader impact of this invention. The hypocausts were a subtle yet powerful testament to Rome's mastery of architecture and engineering, and their influence would stretch far beyond the city's walls. In this single system lay the roots of a legacy that would echo through centuries, eventually inspiring the heating systems of later European architecture. Marcus walked back through the streets of Rome, his steps warmed by the knowledge that he was part of a culture that looked beyond mere survival. Rome's engineers, architects, and artisans strove to create not only functional structures, but places where life could thrive in comfort, where cold stone could be transformed into a welcoming warmth, and where innovation became an enduring symbol of civilization's reach. The hypocausts, like the aqueducts and roads, wove Rome's fabric into something grand, an intricate tapestry of ingenuity that made life not only bearable, but richly, warmly enjoyable. Chapter 7. Celebrating the Feast of Engineers. The sun was beginning to set over Rome, casting a warm golden light across the city's majestic buildings as people gathered in the Forum for a celebration that was rare in its purpose and profound in its significance. The evening air buzzed with excitement as citizens, dignitaries, and members of the Senate filled the open square, the aroma of roasted meats and fresh bread wafting from banquet tables laid out under the watchful gaze of marble statues and towering columns. Tonight, the feast was in honor of Rome's engineers, the craftsmen of stone and water, earth and fire, whose tireless work had transformed the city. Marcus found himself standing among his fellow engineers, masons, and laborers, each of them dressed in simple but well-kept togas, their eyes bright with pride. They had been invited as honored guests, an acknowledgement of their contributions to the empire's greatness. Rome's wealth and power had been built not only on conquest, but on the strength of its roads, aqueducts, and monumental buildings, feats made possible by the ingenuity and perseverance of the very men gathered here. At the center of the gathering, atop a raised platform, stood Emperor Claudius himself. Though his figure was not imposing, he was slightly stooped, with a calm but thoughtful gaze. His presence commanded the attention of everyone in the Forum. Around him were banners bearing the symbols of Rome's greatest accomplishments: the arch, the aqueduct, the hammer and chisel. Behind him, the Senate and high-ranking officials looked on approvingly, acknowledging the vital role these engineers played in securing Rome's legacy. Claudius raised a hand to silence the crowd, his voice steady as it carried across the square. "Citizens of Rome," he began, his eyes sweeping over the assembly. "Today we gather not to honor a great general or a politician, but to recognize those whose hands have shaped the heart of our empire. The engineers, architects, and laborers who have built Rome from the ground up. These are the men who make our prosperity possible." The crowd erupted in applause, and Marcus felt a surge of pride as he looked around at his fellow engineers. To be celebrated so publicly was a rare honor, especially for men whose work usually took place in the shadows, beneath the stones and mortar that concealed their efforts from view. Claudius's speech continued, his words reflecting an understanding of their contributions that was both personal and profound. He spoke of the aqueducts that carried life-giving water across miles, the roads that bound the empire together, and the structures, temples, baths, villas that gave Rome its grandeur. To our engineers, Claudius continued, raising a bronze cup of wine, Rome owes not only its beauty, but its stability, its health, its strength. Through your work, you have woven Rome into an enduring city, a beacon to all who see it. And for that, you will always be remembered. After the toast, attendants came forward bearing gifts for the engineers. Marcus's name was called, and he stepped forward to receive a silver-plated hammer, its handle engraved with a delicate pattern of ivy leaves. The symbol was both a practical tool and a piece of art, a testament to the beauty in their craft. Others received similar tokens, a chisel, a level, each gift unique yet carrying the same message of appreciation for their skill and dedication. Returning to his place in the crowd, Marcus felt the weight of the hammer in his hand, its polished surface gleaming in the evening light. Around him, his colleagues murmured in excitement, lifting their own tools with pride. These gifts, though simple, were reminders of their contributions to the city and its people. The banquet tables, piled high with fruits, cheeses, roasted meats, and fresh loaves of bread, were open to them, and as they took their seats, musicians began to play a light, cheerful tune that drifted through the forum. As the meal began, Marcus found himself seated beside Lucius Domitian, the surveyor with whom he had worked closely on the Aqua Claudia project. Lucius raised his cup with a grin. "To Rome's roads, its aqueducts, its sewers," he said, his voice carrying a trace of pride and humor. "And to the men who make them." Marcus laughed and joined in the toast, feeling the weight of months of labor slip from his shoulders. For the first time, he allowed himself to look back, to see the sheer scope of what he and his colleagues had accomplished. They had built the arteries of a city, laid down stones that would be walked upon for generations. Rome's citizens might never see their faces or know their names, but their work would endure in every path, every arch, every drop of water that flowed through the aqueducts. Around him, the men spoke of their projects with a renewed sense of purpose, exchanging stories of obstacles overcome, techniques shared, and designs perfected. Marcus listened as one of the younger architects marveled at the resilience of the aqueduct arches, a feature he was sure would stand long after they were gone. Another engineer, older and gray-haired, spoke with quiet satisfaction of the Cloaca Maxima, the sewer system that prevented the city from flooding and kept its streets free of waste, a seemingly invisible feat, yet essential to the city's very life. Between bites of food and sips of wine, the engineers discussed the future. They spoke of new methods to strengthen roads, ideas to improve water flow in the aqueducts, even experiments with materials that could withstand Rome's heavy foot traffic. For Marcus, these conversations were more than idle dreams. They were glimpses of the future they would build, a reminder that the city would continue to grow, its needs shifting as its people expanded into new territories, its structures evolving to keep pace with the empire's reach. As the evening deepened and the stars appeared above the forum, Marcus took a moment to stand alone at the edge of the square, gazing out over the city. Rome's streets lay spread before him, a labyrinth of stone and marble, roads that stretched beyond the forum, reaching out to distant provinces. In his mind's eye, he could see them, could imagine the miles upon miles of stone that bound the empire together, the aqueducts and sewers that kept it healthy, the arches and pillars that held it high. He realized then that he and his colleagues were not merely engineers, but builders of Rome's very identity. Through their hands, they had crafted a city that was not only magnificent, but enduring, a symbol of civilization's highest ideals. Long after they were gone, these structures would remain, a testament to the knowledge, skill, and labor that had raised Rome from a cluster of huts to the heart of an empire. And as he looked out over the city, Marcus felt a profound sense of peace. He had found his place within the vast expanse of Rome, his purpose woven into the stones beneath his feet. The tools of their trade, the roads, the water channels, the baths, all of it was part of a legacy that would stretch far beyond his lifetime, a silent but lasting tribute to the engineers of Rome. Chapter 8: The Christian Empire. As twilight settled over Rome, the once familiar silhouette of the city began to take on a new shape, a blending of its past with the profound transformation that marked this era. Flavius Valerius, an aging man with years of service under Constantine and his successors, observed the city with both reverence and curiosity. He had been a witness to Rome's most sweeping change, the shift from an empire of many gods to one bound by the faith of Christ. In the years following Constantine's death, his successors had not only carried on his political legacy, but embraced his faith with a fervor that seeped into every layer of Roman life. Flavius saw this transformation etched across the city's very foundations. Temples that had once thrummed with the energy of ritual sacrifices now stood quiet, their ancient columns casting long shadows over the empty altars within. In their place, churches had risen across the city, from modest chapels nestled in narrow streets to grand basilicas adorned with mosaics of saints and angels. Where once the gods of Rome presided in marble splendor, now stood symbols of the cross, humble yet powerful. Flavius had grown accustomed to seeing citizens gather in these churches, their voices lifting in hymns unfamiliar in his youth, but now woven into the fabric of daily life. For Rome, the gods of Olympus had given way to Christ and his saints, and with each passing year, the faithful grew in number, reshaping the heart of the empire. Flavius recalled the subtle changes that had crept into the empire's governance, quiet shifts that nonetheless signaled a profound shift in values. Constantine had decreed Sunday, a day of rest and worship, a decision that his successors upheld and reinforced. In the courts of law, crosses were now displayed, and justice was administered in the name of the Christian God. These symbols, subtle at first, soon became unavoidable, marking the empire with a new, singular faith that Flavius could scarcely have imagined as a young man. His observations extended beyond Rome to the empire's new capital, Constantinople. There, the spirit of Constantine was tangible in every brick and pillar. The city's churches, their domes towering above the skyline, were visible from nearly every vantage point, their intricate mosaics glinting in the sunlight. In the forums, statues of saints had begun to replace the likenesses of gods and emperors, their serene faces watching over the bustling crowds below. Flavius saw in Constantinople a future that was already becoming reality. The empire not only united by roads and aqueducts, but now bound by a faith that promised unity and peace. Yet for all these changes, Flavius knew that the ancient beliefs had not vanished entirely. Some Romans, especially the older generation, held fast to the gods of their ancestors, lighting small lamps before statues of Jupiter or offering garlands to Venus in quiet corners of their homes. In the countryside, far from the reach of Constantine's edicts, villagers still gathered for pagan festivals, marking the rhythms of planting and harvest with traditions passed down for generations. The old ways persisted, though now with a quieter voice, a whisper of the past in a world that looked ever toward the future. Flavius sensed the tensions between these two worlds, an empire looking to the heavens for salvation, while parts of it clung to the earthbound gods of its past. Among some senators, there were murmurs of resistance, a longing for the Rome that had once thrived under Jupiter's watchful eye. For these men, the rise of Christianity felt like an erosion of Rome's identity, a departure from the traditions that had defined the city for centuries. But Flavius knew that Constantine's legacy, steeped in faith and bound by the cross, was an unstoppable force. Each new ruler embraced Christianity more openly, and with each passing year, the empire moved further from its pagan origins. One afternoon, standing on a hillside that overlooked the vast stretches of Roman territory, Flavius felt the full weight of this transformation. The empire sprawled before him, from the snow-capped peaks of the north to the arid deserts of the south, each region marked by symbols that reflected Rome's newfound faith. Where once he would have seen only the pillars of temples and shrines, now he observed church spires and crosses interwoven with the empire's landscape, signs of the enduring influence of Constantine's vision. Pilgrims walked the roads once trodden by soldiers, seeking not conquest but communion, traveling to sites of worship that drew believers from all corners of the empire. In that quiet moment, Flavius felt a profound clarity. Rome had indeed entered a new era, one where its spirit was no longer measured by the might of its legions or the splendor of its statues, but by the quiet strength of a faith that promised redemption and unity. Christianity, once practiced in hidden corners and catacombs, had become the heartbeat of the empire, a force that bound Romans to one another with a vision of eternal life and grace. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the hills, Flavius felt at peace. Rome would endure, he knew, but it would be a different Rome than the one he had known in his youth. A Rome where emperors ruled with crosses upon their banners, where churches stood side by side with the temples of old. Constantine's legacy, borne forward by the faith he had carried to his final days, would shape not only the empire's future, but perhaps the fate of the world itself. In that quiet dusk, Flavius took a final look over the empire that had changed before his eyes, now filled with symbols of a faith that transcended the temporal, pointing towards something timeless, eternal.